Kill that weak version of yourself. Good morning, everyone. There's a version of ourselves that we carry quietly in the background. It's the version that hits snooze, not because we need rest, but because we're avoiding responsibility. It's the version that tells us we're not good enough, because it's afraid we might actually become someone who is. It's the version that settles for comfort, mediocrity, and a life just good enough to avoid change. And I want to tell you something today. That version of you needs to die. I know that's a heavy phrase, but I don't mean it violently. I mean it intentionally. There's a version of you that isn't necessarily bad, it's just comfortable. It's the voice in your head that says you've done enough, even when you know you haven't pushed to your potential. It's the part of you that chooses safety over risk, silence over expression, and routine over reinvention. This version isn't malicious. It's not trying to ruin your life. In fact, in its own way, it believes it's protecting you. That version of you was shaped by fear, by past failures, by rejection, embarrassment, and the unknown. It learned that taking big swings could lead to big stumbles, so it adapted. It started whispering, play it safe, blend in, don't push too hard. And the problem is that version of you became familiar. So familiar that you might have started confusing it with who you really are. But here's the truth. That version of you isn't who you were born to be. It's who you learned to be to survive. It's a collection of defense mechanisms, insecurities, and outdated beliefs that once served you, but no longer do. And yet, because it feels like home, you keep returning to it. You let it call the shots. You let it steer the wheel, not because it's the best driver, but because it's the one you know best. The irony is, the version of you that holds you back feels like the safest bet, but in reality, it's the most dangerous. Why? Because while it keeps you safe from failure, it also keeps you from growth. It keeps you from building the career you want, speaking up in rooms you were meant to lead, and chasing dreams that scare you in the best way. It convinces you that doing just enough is fine, that being comfortable is the goal, that mediocrity is acceptable. But deep down, you know better. You know you were made for more. The weak version of you is not your enemy, but it is your limit. And you can't become who you're meant to be until you let that version go. That means recognizing when it's speaking, when it's driving your decisions, and when it's holding you back from taking action. It means calling it out, not with shame, but with clarity. It means saying, I see you. I know why you're here, but you're not in charge anymore. You don't need to hate that version of yourself. You just need to stop giving it power. Growth isn't about erasing your past. It's about choosing a different future, one where fear doesn't lead, one where comfort isn't king, one where you're not just surviving, but becoming. That familiar weak version of you had a role. But that role has expired, and the strongest thing you can do now is retire it. Not with bitterness, but with gratitude, and the courage to move forward without it. Comfort is a beautiful trap. It feels good, doesn't it? Waking up at the same time every day, going through a routine that doesn't challenge you, doing just enough to get by. There's no real stress, no major risk. Everything is predictable, safe, familiar. And that's the problem. See, the danger with comfort is that it doesn't feel dangerous. It feels like peace, but in reality, it can be stagnation disguised as stability. The comfort zone is where dreams quietly die, not because of failure, but because of inaction. Because when things are good enough, we stop reaching for great. We stop striving, we stop growing, and little by little, we shrink into a smaller version of ourselves, one that fits the mold of convenience rather than purpose. The truth is, human beings are wired for growth. We feel most alive when we're moving forward, when we're building something, becoming something, evolving into someone better. But growth is rarely comfortable. It's messy, uncertain, and often painful. It asks us to step into the unknown, to take risks, to face failure and rejection, and that's exactly why so many people stay put. Because it's easier to stay in the job you don't love than to go after the one that excites you but scares you. It's easier to stay silent than to speak up and risk being misunderstood. It's easier to repeat what you've always done than to reinvent who you are. But here's the thing. Comfort will never give you what courage can. Comfort might protect your ego, but it won't fulfill your soul. It might keep you from falling, but it will also keep you from flying, and deep down you know this. That's why you feel that quiet frustration even when life seems fine. That's why something inside you stirs when you see others take bold steps. Not because they're better than you, but because they're doing what you know you're capable of too. They've chosen growth over ease. They've chosen to be uncomfortable in pursuit of something meaningful. You don't break free from comfort by waiting for the perfect moment. There will never be a day when fear doesn't exist. Growth doesn't happen after you feel ready. It happens when you decide that staying the same is no longer an option, when you choose to stretch, to struggle, to step forward even when your legs are shaking. It doesn't mean you have to turn your life upside down overnight. It means you stop settling. You stop pretending that fine is enough. You start asking yourself what you really want, and who you really are beneath the layers of safety you've built. You get honest, you get intentional, you get uncomfortable, because comfort is a cage that looks like a castle. And the moment you realize that, the moment you're willing to trade temporary ease for lasting growth, you unlock the door. And on the other side is the version of you that you were always meant to become. Weakness doesn't always look like falling apart. Sometimes it looks like delay. It looks like hesitation, procrastination, second guessing, and excuse making. It shows up quietly, often disguised as logic. I'll start when I'm ready. I need more time. Or this isn't the right moment. But what weakness really feeds on, what keeps it alive, is a lack of clarity. Because when you don't know who you are or why you're doing something, every obstacle feels like a reason to stop. That's why clarity is the most powerful weapon you can carry. It doesn't just help you make decisions, it helps you stand in them. Clarity is what cuts through confusion, it silences doubt, it brings purpose to pain and meaning to struggle. When you're clear about what you want, and more importantly, why you want it, the resistance doesn't go away, but it loses its power. Most people don't fail because they lack talent. They fail because they lack a compelling reason to keep going when it gets hard. Motivation fades, feelings change, but clarity anchors you. When your purpose is strong enough, it becomes your fuel. It gets you out of bed when comfort tells you to stay under the covers. It pushes you to take action when fear tells you to play it safe. It reminds you that you're not just working for a paycheck, a title, or applause. You're working for a vision, for a legacy, for a life that reflects your values. Clarity doesn't make the journey easier, but it makes it worth it. When you know your why, discipline becomes less of a chore and more of a choice. You stop negotiating with weakness. You stop entertaining distractions. You stop asking for permission. You become focused, intentional, and powerful in your decisions. You don't need to wait to feel ready, because you're no longer led by feelings, you're led by vision. Think about the strongest people you admire, the ones who keep showing up, who lead with conviction, who rise in the face of challenge. They aren't stronger because they're fearless, they're stronger because they're clear. They know what they stand for, they know what matters, and they know what they're willing to struggle for. That clarity is their compass. It's their anchor when life gets chaotic. You don't find clarity by waiting for it to appear, you create it. You sit with yourself, you ask the hard questions. What do I truly value? What kind of life do I want to build? What impact do I want to have? And most importantly, what am I no longer willing to tolerate? Because once you get clear on what matters to you, you'll be able to face discomfort with purpose. You'll be able to say no with confidence and yes with commitment. Clarity simplifies the complex, it energizes the exhausted, it strengthens the weak. So if you want to kill that lesser version of yourself, don't start with willpower, start with clarity, get clear, and then move with purpose. Every single day, whether you realize it or not, you're casting votes, not with a ballot, but with your choices. Each decision you make is a small vote for the kind of person you're becoming. When you hit snooze instead of getting up to train, that's a vote. When you choose to procrastinate instead of take action, that's a vote. When you speak up despite the fear, that's a vote too, and those votes add up. Over time, they shape your habits, your mindset, your identity. People often think change comes from big, dramatic moments, a major breakthrough, a life-altering event, but real change. The kind that lasts is built on the accumulation of small, consistent actions. You don't become disciplined overnight. You don't become courageous from one bold move. You become that person by choosing discipline again and again, even when it's uncomfortable. You become courageous by choosing to face fear in 1,000 tiny moments, even when no one else is watching. This is what most people miss. They wait for the motivation. They wait for the right mood, the right energy, the right environment. But the truth is, your future doesn't care how you feel today. Your future is being shaped right now by what you do, not what you intend. Every moment you decide, you're either casting a vote for the strong, focused version of yourself or reinforcing the weaker one that holds you back. This is both the challenge and the beauty of it, because you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be consistent. You don't have to win every battle with your old habits. You just have to start tipping the scale, one better choice today, one brave decision tomorrow, one more vote for the version of you that leads instead of follows, that grows instead of stays stuck. The more you cast votes in the direction of strength, the more you start to believe in that identity. That belief creates momentum, and momentum is powerful. It changes how you show up, how you think, how you handle setbacks. You stop asking, "Can I do this?" and start saying, "This is who I am now." You are not defined by your past decisions, but you are shaped by the ones you make today, and the ones you'll make tomorrow. Every time you choose to show up with effort, with courage, with honesty, you're proving to yourself that the old version doesn't run the show anymore. This is the invitation, live with intention. Pay attention to the votes you're casting. Don't leave your growth to chance. Don't let old habits quietly win because you weren't paying attention. Lead yourself by making the small, hard choices. Show up when it's inconvenient. Stay committed when it's not easy. You're not just making decisions, you're becoming someone, and every choice is a vote. Make them count. Sometimes the greatest battles we fight are the ones no one sees, the ones that happen quietly in our own minds. You feel the resistance, the hesitation, the fear creeping in. The voice that says you're not ready, or why bother? It's tempting to argue with that voice, to try to convince yourself that you're good enough, smart enough, strong enough. But that voice doesn't need a debate. It doesn't respond to logic or motivation. It feeds on attention, and the more you engage with it, the stronger it becomes, the better path. Don't argue, just outgrow it. You don't have to prove your worth to that old version of yourself. You don't need to explain your ambition to the part of you that's afraid. You simply need to move forward, consistently, intentionally, and without apology. Growth isn't about winning arguments with your insecurities. It's about building a life so rooted in action that your doubts can't keep up. Weakness will always try to pull you into a conversation. It'll whisper things like, "You've failed before, remember," or "What if this doesn't work out?" But while you're trying to reason with those thoughts, you're not taking action, and that's where weakness wins, not because it's right, but because it's louder in the silence of inaction. Outworking and outgrowing that weak version means you choose movement over meditation. Not the kind of mindless hustle that burns you out, but purposeful progress. You wake up and do the work. You keep your promises to yourself. You set the alarm, go to the gym, have the difficult conversation, write the page, make the call. Not because it's easy, but because it's aligned with the stronger, wiser version of you that you're building. Every time you take action in the direction of growth, you prove that the weak version is outdated. You prove that it's no longer the authority in your life, and over time that voice starts to fade, not because you yelled louder, but because you simply stopped feeding it. Here's the powerful truth: growth makes that weaker voice irrelevant. Not because it disappears completely, but because it no longer holds weight in your decisions. The more you show up for yourself, the more you realize that fear and self-doubt can exist in the background, but they don't get a vote. They don't make the rules anymore. You don't have to be fearless. You just have to be faithful to your habits, your goals, your values. Faithful to the vision you have for your life. And that faith is built through repetition, not inspiration. So don't get stuck in mental debates with the old you. Let your actions speak louder. Let your discipline answer the doubt. Let your growth make the excuses irrelevant. You don't defeat your weaknesses by yelling at them. You outgrow them quietly, relentlessly, powerfully. Keep showing up. That's how you win. We often think that the changes we make in our lives are just for us, that pushing ourselves, developing discipline, or pursuing growth is a personal journey, something internal, something quiet. But the truth is, your transformation isn't just about you. It's about everyone who's watching, whether you realize it or not. You don't live in a vacuum. The way you show up matters. It creates a ripple effect far beyond your immediate circle. Every time you choose to rise, to keep going, to face your fear instead of surrendering to it, you are giving someone else permission to do the same. You become proof that change is possible, that growth is real, that the weak version of ourselves is not permanent, but optional. And whether it's your younger sibling, your teammate, your coworker, or even a stranger scrolling past your story, someone is being impacted by the way you carry yourself. This is why your fight to become better is not selfish. It's service, it's leadership in its purest form. People don't follow words, they follow example, and your example is the most powerful thing you have. Because when someone sees you show up, especially when it's hard, they begin to believe they can too. When they watch you get back up after failing or recommit after falling off track, they realize that setbacks don't have to be the end of the story. That is leadership, and let's be honest, our world doesn't need more perfection. It needs more people willing to try, willing to be honest about the struggle, willing to keep going anyway. That's where influence begins, not in having it all figured out, but in being real enough to show others what growth actually looks like: messy, uncomfortable, relentless. When you step into the stronger version of yourself, you're not just lifting your own life, you're raising the standard for everyone around you. You're showing your family what's possible. You're teaching your friends what discipline looks like. You're challenging your circle, not with judgment, but with example. And sometimes the people closest to you won't say it out loud, but they're watching, and they're being moved by the silent leadership of your consistency. So when you feel like quitting, remember, it's not just your dream on the line. Someone else's belief might be attached to your breakthrough. Someone else's momentum might be sparked by your persistence. The stronger you become, the more you make space for others to step into their own strength. This is bigger than you, and that's what makes it beautiful. So keep going, keep choosing growth, keep pushing past the weaker version of yourself. Not just for your own success, but for the ones who don't even know they need you yet. Because when one person rises, it gives everyone else around them a little more courage to rise too. You becoming your best self isn't just about you, it's about all of us.